August 1st, 2012. 9:30 in the morning. The New York Stock Exchange opens for the day. At a firm across the river in Jersey City, a piece of software wakes up. It starts buying and selling stocks at machine speed, sending millions of orders in under an hour and bleeding money as it goes. Nobody intended for it to do this, and for the next 45 minutes, no one can work out how to stop it. The software belongs to Knight Capital, one of the biggest trading firms in America. At 9:30 a.m., Knight is a 17-year-old giant handling billions of dollars a day. By 10:15, the company is dying. 45 minutes. That's how long it takes. And the thing that kills Knight Capital isn't a hacker, or a market crash, or fraud. It's 9 years of dormant code, one missed server, and a deployment nobody double-checked. This is Failstate. This is how it happened. First, you need to know what Knight Capital actually was, because most people have never heard of it. That's normal. Ordinary investors almost never dealt with Knight directly. Knight dealt with the brokers who did. When a regular person bought a stock through their broker in 2012, there was a good chance the trade didn't happen on an exchange floor. It happened inside Knight's computers. Knight was what's called a market maker. Its job was standing in the middle of the market, always ready to buy what you were selling and sell what you were buying, collecting a tiny slice on every trade. Tiny slices add up when you handle the volume Knight did. The firm traded around 3.3 billion shares a day, more than $20 billion in stock. Across 2011 and 2012, Knight accounted for roughly 10% of all trading in listed American stocks. A business like that has one product: speed. Knight's software decided in fractions of a second what to buy, what to sell, and at what price. Humans set the strategy. Machines did the trading, and for 17 years, that worked. Which brings us to the machine at the center of this story. Knight's order router, a system called SMARS. Think of SMARS as the dispatcher. Big orders came in the top. SMARS chopped them into smaller child orders and fired those out to the exchanges. SMARS was fast. It was reliable, and buried inside it was an obsolete function Knight had stopped using in 2003. And then, 2 years later, accidentally broke. Years earlier, Knight's engineers had built a SMARS function called PowerPeg. What it originally traded matters less than how it worked. PowerPeg fired off child orders over and over, while a counter tracked how much of the parent order had been filled. When the count hit the target, the counter told PowerPeg to stop. Simple. Knight stopped using PowerPeg in 2003. But here's the decision that matters. Nobody deleted it. The code stayed inside SMARS, present and callable, wired to real money. If you've worked in IT for more than a week, you know exactly why. Deleting old code feels risky. What if something still depends on it? Leaving it alone feels safe, so it gets left alone and forgotten, and the years go by. Then, in 2005, Knight made a small change. Another part of SMARS needed that share counting function, so engineers moved it to an earlier point in the code. That change meant PowerPeg could no longer correctly recognize when a parent order had been filled. The retired function had quietly lost its off switch, and Knight never retested PowerPeg to find out, because why would you test something you don't use? One more detail, and it's the one that pulls the trigger. PowerPeg was activated by a flag in the system, a simple on-off switch in the code. After 2003, that flag wasn't used in normal operation, but it still existed, and the old code behind it was still listening. In the summer of 2012, someone decided to reuse it. That summer, the New York Stock Exchange announced something called the Retail Liquidity Program, a new way for firms to compete for orders from everyday retail investors. Retail orders were the heart of Knight's business, so sitting this out meant handing its bread and butter to competitors. Knight wanted in. There was just one problem. The announcement came in July, and the program went live August 1st. Knight had about a month to build, test, and ship the code. So Knight's developers wrote new code for SMARS. The plan was tidy. The new code would replace PowerPeg in that part of the router and reuse its old activation flag. Flip the flag on, and SMARS runs the new retail program. PowerPeg gets removed in the process. Clean. At least, in theory. Beginning July 27th, Knight deployed the new code in stages across its 8 SMARS servers. The copying was done by hand, and during that process, a technician missed one server. No second technician reviewed the deployment. No required check confirmed afterward that the 8 servers matched. So on 7 servers, the flag now activated the new code. On the 8th, PowerPeg was still sitting there, still wired to that same flag. And on August 1st, Knight turned the flag on for all 8. Here's the part of the story that should keep you up at night, because the system announced the problem in advance. Before the market opened on August 1st, starting at 8:01 a.m., an internal Knight system called BNet began generating automated rejection emails. They weren't designed as alarms, just routine system messages. But the text pointed straight at SMARS and named the error in plain words: PowerPeg disabled. 97 of those messages went out to Knight staff before the opening bell. An hour and a half of warning, while there was still time. Nobody acted on them. They weren't configured as critical alerts, so they landed in inboxes alongside every other automated notification a trading firm generates in a morning. And when everything is an email, nothing is an alarm. At 9:30, the bell rang. Orders started flowing into SMARS. 7 servers did their job correctly. The 8th received orders carrying the flag, looked up what that flag meant, and found its old answer: run PowerPeg. The retired code began firing child orders into the live market, buying at the offers, selling into the bids, crossing the spread again and again, losing a little money on every round trip. At machine speed, a little money becomes a lot of money very quickly. And remember, the 2005 change. The counter that was supposed to tell PowerPeg it was done wasn't talking to it anymore. Fills poured back in from the exchanges. PowerPeg never got the message that it could stop, so it didn't. From just 212 incoming orders, Knight's system generated some 4 million executions across 154 stocks, more than 397 million shares in about 45 minutes. Stocks started swinging violently. In 37 of them, prices moved more than 10%, while Knight's own trading made up over half the volume. Wizard Software, a company few people had ever heard of, went from around $3.50 to almost $15 during the disruption. Traders across Wall Street watched the chaos and asked the same question: who is doing this? Inside Knight, they could see enormous positions piling up in their own systems. What they couldn't work out quickly was where they were coming from. Picture that room. Your own company is accumulating billions in unexplained positions, visibly, publicly, and every minute of confusion has a 7-figure price tag. The engineers started hunting. Was it the new code? The exchange's new program? Bad data? And then someone made the call that turned a disaster into a catastrophe. When a new deployment starts acting up, there's a reflex every IT person knows: roll it back. Return to what was running before. Most days, it's the right move. Knight's team removed the new code from the 7 healthy servers. Think about what that actually did. On those 7 servers, the flag once again pointed at the old code underneath. The flag was still on. The problem that had started on one server could now happen on all 8. The order flood got worse. The rollback is the most human moment in this whole story. It wasn't stupidity. It was a standard playbook applied to a system nobody fully understood anymore. A rollback is only safe when you know exactly what state you're returning to. Knight didn't. And the safety nets that should have caught all of this were missing. Knight had risk limits on paper. The account collecting these unwanted positions carried a nominal $2 million position limit. It blew past that limit and kept accumulating into the billions. Because the limit was never connected to an automated stop, SMARS just kept sending. There was no effective automated control watching what SMARS sent out, and no written procedure telling staff when a malfunctioning system should be pulled off the market. The big red button everyone assumes exists at a place like this had never been built into the controls. By the time they finally strangled the system, it was around 10:15 a.m. In 45 minutes, Knight had accumulated roughly $3.5 billion in stocks it never wanted to own, and over $3 billion more in short positions it never meant to take. Nearly $7 billion in accidental bets. Unwinding them left a loss the SEC later put at more than $460 million. The year before, Knight's entire annual profit was about $115 million. The company had lost roughly 4 years of profit before most people finished their morning coffee. Trading firms run on borrowed trust. Knight's capital was the cushion that let other firms trade with it safely, and the cushion was gone. Partners began pulling business. The stock lost over 70% of its value in 2 days. Knight had until Monday morning to find hundreds of millions of dollars or die. Over the weekend, it found them. On Monday, August 6th, a group of investors put up $400 million in an emergency rescue. Knight survived, technically, but the deal handed the rescuers a stake of roughly 73% of the company. Existing shareholders were massively diluted, and Knight's independence was over. Within a year, it was merged into a rival, and the Knight name eventually disappeared from Wall Street. The SEC later fined the firm $12 million for the control failures behind that morning. The regulator's report reads less like a legal document and more like an incident post-mortem, and every finding points at the same theme. Not one big mistake, a chain of small ones, each survivable on its own. Run the chain back. A retired function left callable in production. A 2005 code change that silently broke it, never retested. An old flag given a new meaning instead of a new one. A manual deployment that left one server out of 8 different from the rest, with nobody checking. 97 emails naming the problem before the market even opened, treated as noise. A rollback into a state nobody understood, and no firm-wide automated capital limit capable of stopping SMARS once the losses began. And this wasn't even Knight's first warning. Less than a year earlier, test data accidentally left active after a disaster recovery exercise had generated bad automated quotes and cost the firm nearly $7.5 million. Knight fixed that specific problem. What it never did, the SEC found, was step back and ask the bigger question. What happens when any of our systems start sending bad orders? Break that chain early enough, and August 1st is a boring Wednesday. Delete PowerPeg in 2003. Nothing happens. Retest it in 2005. Nothing happens. New flag, verified deployment, alerts wired into real monitoring. Nothing happens. And even after 9:30, working capital limits or a practiced shutdown procedure would have turned a company-ending event into an expensive morning. That's the uncomfortable lesson, and it's why this story still gets taught. Knight wasn't an amateur operation run by fools. It was a successful firm full of smart people moving fast, carrying the same quiet shortcuts that exist in almost every system. The old code nobody wants to touch, the manual step everyone trusts, the alerts everyone ignores. The market just happened to be the one environment where all of it could detonate in under an hour in public with a running dollar counter. Most organizations never find out which of their shortcuts is the loaded one. Knight found out on a Wednesday morning, 45 minutes at a time. Every system fails eventually. This one just did it faster than anyone thought possible. This has been Failstate. If you want more stories about the day the machines stopped working, the next one is already being researched. Subscribe so you don't miss it.